The Stanley Cup final is finally over, and we are less than a week away from the free agency period. We talked about the RFAs. Now let's go to the unrestricted free agents on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the Everyday for making this your first listen today, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking everything about your Carolina Hurricanes. I am your host, Zach Martin. I am the Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hockey Writers. I also do some AHL coverage over at the Calder Times. I am the co-host of the Search Cast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all of my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. Got a good show for you guys on Tuesday as we talk about the unrestricted free agents for the Carolina Hurricanes. And there's a good amount of them, so we're going to try to get through them for the rest of the week as we possibly can, since for the fact that the free agency and re-sign phase starts next Monday on July 1st. I know when it comes to the RFAs, we did have a couple more guys in terms of on the roster, but in terms of the bigger names on there, we kind of touched them already, so that's why we're moving over to the unrestricted free agents. And the three guys we were going to kick off the unrestricted free agency part of the show for the rest of the week is Jake Guentzel, Jordan Martinook, and Stefan Noesen. Now, before we get into all of that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, or the fact that they are officially over now for the hockey at least, the sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Now, like I said, we are going to start the unrestricted free agent part of the Carolina Hurricanes, and the first guy we're going to go talk about is Jake Guentzel, who the Hurricanes got in a trade on March 7th, the day before the trade deadline, and that's when they gave up Michael Bunting, along with Vasily Ponomarev, a couple other prospects as well, and that's the trade where they got Jake Guentzel, and they also got Ty Smith, who actually they just recently signed to a one-year, two-way deal for Ty Smith to have him go through the 24-25 season with the Hurricanes. So that being said, one part of that deal, it got extended for the, as it's, like I said, now it's Ty Smith who got extended. Now the big question is, will Jake Guentzel come back? And from what all accounts that I've seen, it's very back and forth where the Hurricanes are still in it. There might be a shot where the Canes don't bring him back. He's still looking at possible options where he wants to go. So in terms of looking at Jake Guentzel as a whole, no one really knows what the plan is. It goes from he's leaving to the Hurricanes are still in it. What's the term? What is the dollar amount? Now, the former 77th overall pick in the 2013 entry draft by the Pittsburgh Penguins is 29 years old. He will be turning 30 this October, closer to when the season starts. He's actually just wrapping up a deal where his contract was 5 years at $30 million, which gave him an AAV of $6 million. They signed back in December of 2018 when Jim Rutherford was the general manager for the Penguins. This past season, with the Penguins, at least for 50 games, he had 22 goals, 52 points in 50 games. With the Hurricanes, he actually had 25 points in 17 games and was a plus 16. And in the playoffs, he had 9 points in 11 games, 4 goals, 5 assists, where he was a plus 4. Now, from what AFP Analytics are saying for Jake Guentzel, for what they're projecting for him is going to be a 7-year deal worth $65.172 million. Now, that will take up, projecting-wise, 10.58% of the cap space for whoever does want to sign him. And the projected AAV for that is $9.31 million, which is no surprise for the fact that you look at where he is. He's, currently in the top 3 of playoff performers where he's, where he's very, very good at getting points in the playoffs. He's proven it. He's a former Stanley Cup winner, and he actually, like I said, had a season to where he had, over a point per game with the Penguins, 52 points in 50 games, and with the Hurricanes, he had 25 in 17 to finish with 77 points on the season in 67 games, because he did miss time to being injured. And like I said, he got 9 points in the playoffs. Now, when it comes to the Hurricanes, yes, they're still in it for the most part, but I'm curious to see if the projecting numbers from AFP is saying that Jake Guentzel could be looking at a 7 by 9.31. If you're the Hurricanes, do you make that deal? Now, Guentzel right away had the chemistry with Sebastian Aho and Seth Jarvis. They were probably one of the most lethal lines in the NHL from when he finally joined them, later March and through the rest of the season, because he did play 3 games on the second line, then moved up, and then, after he came back from being injured, played 3 games on the second line, came up to the top line with Aho and Jarvis, and they absolutely just went off. Really good in the playoffs like we all expected him to be. And like I said, do you go for the 7.931? That's the tough part. That's really the tough part, because you can see where it maybe a 7 by 8.5, 7 by 9. I could see that. 7 by 9.31. Yes, you could also see that too. If I'm the Hurricanes, I would love to try to see if you can get him by 7 by 8.5, at the worst 7 by 9. You could make that work. It would take him to when he is 36. You expect him to still be really, really good. Even at between 33 and 36, you're still looking at to work. He might have a little bit of a decline, but it's still manageable where he would still be a very good player for you. Will Eric Tulsky and the Hurricanes do it? Potentially. It's just what else are they looking at in terms of the other guys they have on their roster, like Jordan Martinook, Stefan Noesen, Brett Pesce, Brady Shea. You also got guys next year coming off the Bucks too. You still got to figure out what you're going to do with Jack Drury, Seth Jarvis, Martinook. And Eric Tulsky said that their main goal is the UFAs. And you would have to think that, he told Jeff Merrick that they're having to talk to all the agents pretty much at the same time. They can't just focus on one guy at a time because there's just so many of them. And I'm assuming Jake Guentzel is probably one of those bigger names, because the fact that you gave up a good amount of prospects and an AHL guy and some draft capital to go get Jake Guentzel. You really don't want to have him just for a short-term rental of 17 regular season games and then 11 playoff games for 28 total. You're hoping to extend him long-term, and if the money's right, you hopefully used to be able to stay. And, Jake Guentzel, he loved playing in Carolina, and he hopes, if there's a deal that could work out, he would like to stay. It's just, does he want to stay? Does he want to be closer to home to family in the Midwest because he's from Omaha, Nebraska? Can the Hurricanes be willing to give up that money to keep him here? I could see them giving the money if they really want to do it. It's just, are you looking at a 9.31? Are you looking at 9? Are you looking at 8.5? Is it a 7-year deal? Because, he wants a really long-term contract. If you could talk him to an 8 by 8, maybe you could see where you get the number down. If you give him an extra year, you can go by an 8 by 8 or 8 by 8.5. That's a potential too, but it's a really weird predicament to be in. If you're the Hurricanes, where it's like we don't know for sure what's going on. Like I said, we've heard that they're still in it. There's also talks that Jake Guentzel still wants, a good chunk of money, and there's other teams who are involved, because it seems like a lot of teams are on the Jake Guentzel sweepstakes too. So it's going to be a bidding war, and just to see where Jake's going to be happy at, who's going to give him the money, who's going to give him the term. So the Hurricanes are most likely, like I said, they'll be in it because they have a lot of cap space right now in terms of figuring out what they want to do with that, because right now, where the Hurricanes stand, and just for what is going on right now with the most latest, deals that they've made, they're still sitting at, as of right now, at $23.874 million in their cap space. So there is still a good chance the Hurricanes have the opportunity to bring Jake Guentzel back, and then, what's the rest of the roster going to look like, and what are you going to do with your restricted free agents and all the other UFAs that are on the team as well? Because you're still talking at least 2 of your defensemen that were in your top 6 last year. Are they both gone? And then are you looking at your bottom 6 guys, and Martinook, Stefan Noesen, and all of them? And what's it going to look like for your RFA? So the other Hurricanes are in a very interesting predicament and how it works out. I do believe they could get something done. It's just, will they match the term and will they match the number that Jake Guentzel wants? So it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. I believe right now it's 50-50. I think it's very 50-50 that Jake Guentzel's back. If I want to give a number that's not 50-50 and not make it a super like safe pick, I would say it's about 55-45 that he is gone. But if he does able to stay, then that's great. It's just, do you give him that 7x9.31 or 7x9, or do you try to go and see if he's willing to take an 8x8 or 8x8.5? So who really knows? But let me know in the comments, what do you think? Do you think the Hurricanes keep Jake Guentzel, and what do you think that term could possibly look like? Now, talking about the bottom six, we are going to talk about two guys who do play in the bottom six for the Hurricanes, but do make some big impacts when they really need it, and definitely are some locker room guys in part of the leadership group as well. And that first guy we're talking about is Jordan Martinook, and we'll get to him here in a second on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. All right, guys, we got to talk about FanDuel. And you know me, I love sports, and I love them so much, I never want them to stop, especially hockey. But as the playoffs wind down, or the fact that the Stanley Cup final is officially over for hockey, now we got 90 days until we get some preseason hockey back, we get fewer games now, obviously. And the sports aren't sporting like I want them to, unless you do follow baseball and everything else that's going on right now, and even golf. But with FanDuel, it lets me keep the sports going whenever I want, and wherever you want too. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer, especially with baseball and golf going on, and the CFL if you're into the CFL, if they do that over there on FanDuel. And with FanDuel, it is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So like I said, at the end of segment 1, we are going to start talking about Jordan Martinook and how the assistant captain is looking to potentially, what projected deal that the Hurricanes can make, and why they hopefully try to keep him longer past this year. So the former 58th overall pick in the 2012 entry draft by the Arizona Coyotes will be turning 32 this July. He's just coming off a contract where he had $5.4 million spread over 3 years that he signed back on July of 2021 with Don Waddell, and the AAV was $1.8 million. This past season, Jordan Martinook had 14 goals, which was, his best as a Carolina Hurricane since 2018-19. We had 15. He also had 18 assists, and he had 32 points, which is the second best in his time with the Hurricanes, where last year he had 34, and that was in 82 games. In the playoffs, he had 2 goals for 4 points in 11 games, a little bit less than what he had for 3 goals and 12 points in last year's playoffs, of course. That's when he had 10 points in the series against the New Jersey Devils. But overall, pretty decent season for Jordan Martinook. Like I said, 32 points in 82 games, and he just finished a contract that was $1.8 million per year over the last 3 years. What AFP Analytics is projecting for Jordan Martinook is a 3-year, $8.324 million total value deal, which in terms of what the projected cap hit percentage is going to be is a 3.15%. And then the AAV is $2.774 million. Like I said, that's spanned over 3 years. So if you're looking at where he was the last 3 years on his contract was 1.8. AFP Analytics is saying it's going to be 2.774. Now here's the question: could you possibly work out a deal where you bring him back for a 3x3? Just out of the fact that they just did that for Jalen Chatfield. And like I said, with Jordan Martinook, he is going to be turning 32 this July. Now you give him 3 years, that's going to take him towards almost 35. He's an assistant captain. He's been with the Hurricanes for a long time, and he's a glue guy. He's a hype guy. He's kind of one of those guys you want to have in your locker room. And of course, Jordan Martinook even said in his exit interview that he wants to stay, but he also knows that, veterans and guys who have been leaderships and who've been around for a long time are a hot commodity for a lot of teams. So there could be a good chance that someone might want to snag him up. If I'm the Hurricanes, I don't want to let him go. And, he's a really good bottom six guy. He can play up further up into the top six if they really need him to bring some grit and, bring some energy as well. He's played really well with Jordan Staal and Jesper Foss on that third line for the last couple seasons. Those three are very, very solid. And Martinook is one of those guys where he's a fan favorite. He's a favorite in the locker room. He's one of those guys you do want to keep around. He's got that veteran presence. And like I said, he's an assistant captain too. If you can make it work to where you can give him a 3x3 like you did for Jalen Sheffield, I would hopefully say that would work to keep him here until, like I said, until he's almost 35. And it just makes sense. It just makes sense to keep him around. He's, what you're going to get out of him. He started off 2024 very, very hot, led the team in goals in January with 9. I would say you would try to make anything work to keep him around. And I think a 3x3 deal wouldn't be too bad. You could easily make that work. You can keep him around here. That he'll be that voice. He'll be that energy guy. He's not afraid to, drop the gloves when need be. He's, very physical. And he plays the system like how, Rod Brind'amour wants. He's got that line chemistry with Jordan Staal and Jesper Foss. Both of, Jordan Staal staying for the next 4 seasons. He's, going to play. He's got, 4 more years left on his contract. Jesper Foss is back for another year. Hopefully he's back healthy because he's still dealing with the neck issues, which we haven't heard an update on. But, Martinook's been around. He's mentored a lot of these guys, and it just makes sense to keep someone like that around. Jordan Stahl's really quiet. Jacob Slavin's a pretty quiet guy, so you kind of need like that voice to get the team going. And, they have that in Sebastian Aho as well. But, you're looking at a guy he's got that voice. He's a little bit older. He's a fan favorite. He's really beloved here in Raleigh. And it just makes sense to keep him around. And I think if you're the Hurricanes, you make a deal work. You keep Jordan Martinook around. Unlike the Jake Guentzel where I say it's 55% he might be gone, I would feel like Jordan Martinook's about 75%. And that's just my guess because he's someone that you really just don't want to give up. Like I said, what you get out of him. He can play really well on the PK, really good in the bottom 6. You can move him around if you need to. Not afraid to get in front of the net to get into the greasy goals. He's not afraid to get in the corners. He plays a 200-foot game. He's physical. And it's just he's one of those locker room guys you don't want to get rid of. And I know a lot of people are kind of like, well, we need guys who can score. Does every team need a locker room guy? Yeah, every team does need a locker room guy, and he does score. Like Jordan Martinook knows how to score goals. He's been well known to do that, and you saw what he did in the playoffs last year against the Devils. Got 10 points in a series. Yeah, he only got 4 in these playoffs, but the goals that he scored were very, very huge for the Hurricanes. We're talking about a couple goals where in the Islanders series where it's 2 goals in 9 seconds, and you go from being down to being up and eliminating the Islanders in round 1. Or you do an epic comeback, and it's like, oh my goodness, here we go. So he brings that spark to the team, and I think he's someone that you look at him and what he's done for the Hurricanes, that's a veteran leadership, that's a veteran presence that you don't want to give up. And for me, it would be tough to see him go. Where, yes, he's not going to set the world on fire in terms of points. He's got 197 to 641 games. Yeah, he's got 80 goals, but he's got a fair amount of them with the Hurricanes. Going back to his first season in 18-19 at 15. He had 2, then 4, then 6 over a 3-year span. Then back in the 22-23 season, he had 13, and then he had 14 this past season. So in the last 2 years, he's put up over 30 points, and that's kind of what you want to see out of a guy who plays in a bottom 6 role. So even if it's a 3 by 2.775, yes, you can make that work. But I think if you give him a 3x3, I think that's a contract that's very comparable to doing right by him, giving him the money that he deserves, because he made under 2 this over the last 3 years. He's going to get some good money on the market. So if you're willing to make it work, maybe you throw in a no-move clause like you did for Jalen Sheffield for Jordan Martinook. Maybe it's 1 year, maybe it's 2, and then it goes to a modified no trades. Like, if you give Martinook the same type of contract that Jalen Chatfield has, I think you can make that work. Now, would he be okay with that? Who really knows? But I feel like that's the type of contract where you're kind of like, okay, you're in Carolina for the next 3 years at least. 2 years, it's going to be no move clauses. The last year, it's a no trade list, just like Jalen Chatfield's, and you're going to be in Carolina until you're at least almost 35. So for me, it makes sense to keep him around. So let me know what you think in the comments. Would you want Jordan Martinook to stay, and do you think a 3x3 would work? Or let me know what type of deal do you think that the Hurricanes could make to keep Jordan Martinook with the Hurricanes. So the last guy we're going to talk about tonight is Stefan Noesen, and why he definitely deserves to stay in Carolina after everything he's done, especially this past season for the Hurricanes. And we'll get to that here in a second on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Welcome back to a segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So like I said, at the end of segment 2, we're going to talk about Stefan Noesen. Now, Stefan Noesen is going to be a UFA, of course. That's basically what we've been talking about for the entire show. And he is a former 21st overall pick in the 2011 NHL entry draft by the Ottawa Senators. He is 31 years old. He just got done with his recent deal that they had with the Hurricanes, which was done back in July of 2022 with Don Waddell. It was a 2-year, $1.525 million contract, which gave him an AAV of $762,500. Now, in terms with the Hurricanes, this was his second full season with the team. In 81 games, he had 14 goals, 23 assists for 37 points. Now, in terms of that was his career high in goals, was 14. He did tie his assist total that he had last year. So he tied his career high that he set back in 22-23 with 23 goals or 23 assists. But his points total was the best of his career. So he had a career high in goals with 14 and in points with 37, and he was a plus 13 on the team. In the playoffs, he was very, very clutch for them when they really needed it for the Hurricanes. He had 4 goals in 11 games. And we all know how good Stefan Noesen is because he did win the 22 Calder Cup with the Chicago Wolves that had Jack Drury, Jalen Chatfield, and Pyotr Kochetkov. In 70 games for the Chicago Wolves back in that Calder Cup run, he had 48 goals, 85 points in 70 games. It was a plus 35, and he had 112 penalty minutes, which is just insane to think about. And in the playoffs that year, 9 goals, 25 points in 18 games. So you know that he can score goals. He is very, very good at what he does. Yes, it's the AHL, but that's still really impressive in a Calder Cup run. And, given the opportunity to do what he needs to do, he can prove that he can score goals and put up points. Like I said, 36 the year before, 37 this past season, career high in goals and in points. Plays really great style of hockey. He's a two-way guy that, that Rod Brind'amour loves. He's, like I said, he's got the 200-foot game. He's a two-way player. Yes, he plays bottom 6 minutes. He has been able to play in the top 6 when they really need him to, and he's on the power play. He is the quintessential net front presence guy for the Hurricanes. Like, he's Mr. Net Front. Like, those 4 goals he got in the playoffs, all of them are right in front of the net, getting those playoff-style goals. Tip-ins, rebounds, screening the goalie, doing everything you need to do to get into the corners, muck it up, drive the play, keep it going, not afraid to drop the gloves, because you saw what he did last year against Eric Halla, absolutely took care of him. Even in the Islanders series against Kyle McLean, a former junior Hurricane, he fought him as well, took care of business there. So, like I said, 112 penalty minutes in the Calder Cup run shows that he is not afraid to drop the mitts. Like I say, he's not afraid to muck it up in the corners. He's a very physical guy, but he can put up points when need to be, and he's a really huge asset when it comes to the power play and for Rod Brind'amour. Now, AFP Analytics, this is their projected contract for Stefan Noesen. It is a 3-year, $9.636 million overall deal, which will take up 3.65% of the cap space. Now, the projected cap hit, the AAV will be $3.212 million. So you're looking at a 3-year by $3.212. That's what AFP Analytics is saying. If I'm the Hurricanes, for the fact that you paid this guy less than $800,000 over the last 3 years and he put up career highs in back-to-back seasons, 30-point-plus years, came up clutch for you in the playoffs when you really needed him to, 4 goals in the last playoffs, really clutch ones. You know you get the physicality. You know that he can muck it up. He can score. He plays a physical game. He plays that 200-foot style that Rod Brind'amour loves to have. In 2 full seasons, he's more than proven that he deserves a big contract. In a career year that he just had, I would do as much as I can to keep him around. Yet we just talked about Jordan Martinook giving him a 3x3. I would definitely say that Steph Noesen is more than well deserved that contract as well. And I could see them giving him a 3x3.25 or a 3x $3.3 million. Whatever you can do to keep Steph, I would go as high as 3.5 if you really want to make sure you keep him here, because it's giving he's he wants, if he gets a deal done here, he's happy about it. If there's a deal somewhere else, he'd be happy about it too, because he's looking at free agency. This is my opportunity to go get the money, because he had a career year. He's made less than $800,000, and he knows that he had a year where he can go out there and get, multi-million dollars for, at least 3 years. So you can't really blame him for getting the bag. If I'm the Hurricanes, I do everything I can to make sure that he stays in Carolina, because what you get out of him. That's a power play guy you really need to have. He's a net front guy you really have, because he's the quintessential, like I said, he is the guy in terms of net front presence and being able to play the style that Rod Brind'amour loves. PK, power play, bottom 6. You find any way to keep him here. So if you give him a 3x3.2 or a 3x3.3, or like I said, even if you give it up to a 3.5 for 3 years, I would do it. You don't give him a guy like Stefan Noesen, who can do everything that you need from him and then some. He is that guy. And, you got Pierre Kochetkov locked up for 3 more seasons. You just locked up Jalen Chat. You locked up Jalen Chaffel for 3 more years. You're potentially going to hopefully bring Jack Drury back. So if you bring Steph Noesen back, you got all 4 of the Chicago Wolves that won the Calder Cup back again with you, and you know what you get out of those guys. So you have instant chemistry with 4 guys on that team who all won a title together, and you know what you get out of them. And it's been proven this past season, if you keep Jack Drury and Steph Noesen together, they are really, really good together. So if you bring both of those guys back, there you go. Then you at least have 2/3 of a line that's really going to put up points for you and really do some damage on 5-on-5 play, because you roll 4 lines in Carolina, and having those 2 guys together will be fantastic. And then you got Jalen Chaffel on the blue line, and then you got Pierre Kochetkov in the net. What more can you ask out of that? So if I'm the Hurricanes, I'm going to do everything I can to keep Steph Noesen here. So if it's a 3x3.5, do it. If it's 3x2.5, do it. Just any type of contract you can figure out how to do with them, I would do it and get it done. If he wants 3 years, give it to him. I mean, the guy is literally 31. He just turned 31 back in February. So he's going to be 34 when the contract is up. That's a good number to have. You got Steph Noesen until he's 34. He possibly ends his career in Carolina, and you pay him the money that he deserves. You're going from less than $800,000 to $3.2 million or 3.5 for the next 3 seasons. He's more than well deserved that contract. So if I'm the Hurricanes, I give it to him. You bring him back, and then you got your bottom 6 guy, a guy who you can put on the power play because you know he's going to be the net front presence, a guy who's going to muck it up, a guy who plays a 200-foot game. He fits the system that Rod Brind'amour has, and you want that caliber of where he's been there and done that with the Wolves and with the Hurricanes. So if I'm, like I said, if I'm Carolina, Steph Noesen signs, he stays in Carolina, bing, bang, boom, you're done. You're taking care of with those guys. Like I said, you got Kochetkov, you got Sheffield lined up. You bring back Steph Noesen, you bring back RFA and Jack Drury, and there's your 4 Chicago Wolves you had for the last 2 seasons. You run with it for the next 3 years at least. So let me know what you think of that, Steph Noesen. Do you think a 3x3.2 works, or would you give him a little bit more? So in the comment section, like I said, with Jordan Martinook and Jake Guentzel, let me know what you think of a possible Steph Noesen deal. Do you think Carolina should keep him around? But that will wrap up Tuesday's episode of Locked On Hurricanes. If you want to follow me to keep up to date with everything that's going on with the Hurricanes, you can follow me at OneTrueZach on X. You can follow the podcast at LO_Hurricanes. If you click the link to my bio, you can find all my articles and newsletters at the Hockey Writers, everything to do with the Calder Times for AHL related stuff. You can check out where to listen and watch my other podcast, The Surgecast. And also for this show, there is a link to where you can listen to the podcast on all podcast platforms. And if you leave a 5-star rating and review, I might just read on the show. And make sure to with other Caniacs and everydayers, because hopefully they can become everydayers just like you. And in terms of the YouTube side of things, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification so you don't miss an episode, hit the thumbs up button so let me know if you liked it, and also share with other Caniacs and everydayers, because hopefully they become everydayers just like you. We are very, very close to almost 900 subscribers, and we are on the road to 1,000. And if we get to 1,000, I might just do something special for you guys. But I hope everyone enjoyed this Tuesday episode of Locked On Hurricanes. Hope everyone enjoys their Tuesday, as we're now officially done with the 23-24 season since the Stanley Cup has been awarded. And we got the draft coming up this week and free agency starting next week. But until all of that, as always, and until next time, let's go Canes.